Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field educate, inform and inspire the community to live a more balanced and healthier lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is naturopath, respiratory specialist and published author Julia Rudakova, and she will be talking with us about children's respiratory health. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
So what are some of the common children's respiratory health issues?
Well, I see a lot of children in my practice, and most often parents bring their kids with tonsillitis, recurrent coughs, and of course asthma. Asthma is one of the top conditions that I see children for. And what is asthma? Asthma is constriction of airways, really. And the body, when it does that in response to a trigger, it can be an emotional trigger, it can be a chemical trigger, can be viral. There is a physical activity-induced asthma. And when that happens, body starts producing mucus as well to safeguard itself, to expel the trigger and to moisten the airways. So it's a very, very natural response of the body. There is no pathology is that. When that happens, it's the body doing its work, protecting itself, although it seems and sounds and looks terrible to observe your child struggling to breathe. Another common respiratory condition that I see in kids is anything to do with tonsils, adenoids. So they are lymphatic tissues that are located at the back of the throat in the nasal passage, and they are immune tissues. They're lymphatic immune tissues, and it's not uncommon for young children to go through that because their immune system is maturing, and that's quite normal if it becomes a pattern. And if they get recurrent tonsillitis and enlarged adenoid to the point of not being able to breathe for months on end, then we have an issue and we need to address that. But from my perspective, the thing is that even when all the tissues are cut out, all adenoids gone, tonsils are out, what happens, what I observe is that they still breathe through the mouth. They can still snore. They may have initial adjustment and parents are happy and there is an improvement, but then they go back to the pattern, to the original pattern of mouth breathing, and that's not helping their dental health, their emotional health. Children wake up tired, and that's the worst thing because children by their nature are very energetic. They have so much energy. They need energy to grow, to develop, to grow bones, to multiply cells, and for the brain to develop. And when they lose that, it sets them back. So it comes down to retraining the receptors in the brain, and that's where we use the Buteyko technique.
So can you explain to us what is the Buteyko technique? How does it work?
So it was developed by the late Dr. Buteyko many decades ago, and originally it was used for cardiovascular disease, but then it was trialed for asthma and respiratory disease because it is to do with your lungs and bronchi. And what it does, it teaches the body, again, reteaches, the body has to relearn how to breathe in a more functional way. What does that mean, to breathe in a more functional way? So there is a certain breathing rate that we aim at, and it's about 6 to 8 breaths per minute. So 6 to 10 maximum breaths per minute is our optimal range, right? So it's a slow breathing. It's gentle, so when you sit next to someone, you ideally shouldn't be able to hear them breathe, right? Sometimes it's very audible, our breath. Yeah, you sit to a person at the table in a cafe or at a function and you can hear them breathe. So that's not something that we call functional. The next one is how we breathe. Do we use the nose or the mouth? Right. So with the mouth, if you look at the hole here and here, mouth is much bigger. So we lose more important gases such as carbon dioxide, which is the driver to breathing, not oxygen. So Buteyko technique, what it does, it teaches us to go back to the original blueprint of the healthy breathing. The rate, what organs we use, what muscles we use to breathe, so the diaphragm instead of the chest, nose instead of the mouth, and proper breathing rate, and how we breathe, gentle or forceful. So that's in a nutshell what we do with the functional breathing retraining.
So what would be your advice to parents with kids who have respiratory health issues?
My advice would be to go back to the fundamentals and address their breathing patterns. It's super important, as I said before, to optimize the results of their treatment. And they can start with observing their child's breathing. And when they notice that the lips are slightly open, even if there is no audible breathing through the mouth, but the lips are slightly open, it means that the child is losing certain chemistry. And what they can do, I always say, they can say, close your mouth, but it becomes repetitive and annoying. So what I always say, just find a word like a giraffe and have this game with a child. When you say the word giraffe, it means that they need to close the lips and close the mouth, and that pushes the body to breathe through the nose. So reestablish nasal breathing at all costs is my tip. And of course, we need to go and seek help of a professional naturopathic practitioner or any medical practitioner and get a proper assessment and a proper plan.
Thank you so much for your time, Julia. If you'd like to know more about children's respiratory health issues and Julia, you can visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. Stick around, because after the break, we'll be back with another guest and another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, psychologist, author and speaker Faye Evans will explore why we ignore our inner wisdom, insights from psychology and neuroscience. Welcome back. Our second guest for today is psychologist, author and speaker Faye Evans. Faye will be exploring the topic, why do we ignore our inner wisdom? Insights from psychology and neuroscience. Welcome, Faye.
Hello, Barbara, and thank you for having me today.
What is inner wisdom?
Inner wisdom is that little voice that we all have inside. Now, sometimes it's viewed from different aspects. Some people may call it intuition. And sometimes this term intuition has this connotation that it's not real, that it's maybe even mystical, or that maybe, it's linked some way into some spirituality. But what we know from neuroscience is that actually it's something that we all access, because our brain works sometimes so quickly that it gathers information from pattern recognition, that it gathers information from visceral knowing that happens before we actually engage in an activity. And this information that we gather happens at a very subtle, unconscious level. So sometimes we have that kind of meeting a person and we just have that feeling or that gut sense, right? That we think, oh, this is going to work or this is not going to work. So that's what we call inner wisdom or intuition. It's more what we say in psychology, a felt sense. It's something we feel, not something we think, but something we feel. And it helps us because sometimes, let's say that you're going to make a buy, you're going to make a decision, you're going to engage in a venture, or maybe you're going to take a choice. And we think usually that we make those choices just by logic. But logic is not the answer completely. Sometimes we need something else, something deeper, something more profound, something more philosophical, something that really is more whole to get us into that appreciation to make the right choice. And that is when we need to listen to that inner wisdom that's interpreted as a felt sense, that feeling deep inside that's telling us, yes, do it, or stay away from it, don't do it.
Why are people ignoring their inner wisdom?
So when we think about why people are so times engaged more in the outside world, is because they have some difficulties with something that I call the problems with the peace. People pleasing, productivity, perfectionistic, and trying to always prove themselves. They feel like they're constantly having to do these things outwardly. So they don't have time to hear what's going inside. They don't have time to listen to that felt sense. They don't have time to connect with their inner gut or the inner body or the heart or whatever name you want to call it. They don't have time for that inner wisdom because they're constantly looking outside for answers. They're looking for someone else's approval. They're looking for someone else's guidance. They're looking for someone else's advice. They're looking for something outside of them. But all along, we know that the best ways to sometimes find a solution is looking inwardly and hearing that little voice inside. Another big problem that we face is that lots of people are paralyzed by fear. You see, listening to your inner self will mean that you are somehow more responsible of your choices, and that paralyzes them. And also, some people are very impulsive and they don't have the time to really reflect before giving an answer. They just jump to conclusions. They just want to bounce to respond or do or act, and they don't have the time to think. Before you say a yes or a no, you should always say, let me think about it. That buys you some time and gives you a pause. But if we really think about that, we should use that same sentence for anything in life. Because many times when we are asked a question, we may not be really sure. And we may need to reflect about it. We need to really think if we are going to commit to it. We need really feel if this choice or this response that we're going to give is going to be aligned with us. And instead of being impulsive in responding, we should be able to step back and think before responding, feel before responding, connect with ourselves before responding. And the part of the fear here, the fear part, is that if we jump into answering too quick, we may give the wrong answer. But also, if we jump into answering too quick, we believe that we're giving the right answer. And that's not necessarily true.
What advice do you have for everyone out there to really not just listen to, but also trust their inner wisdom? What steps can they take?
The first thing is that we know that we all, as we gain years of experience, we go through life and we have a lot of knowledge. And we accumulate knowledge through life experiences, through growing, through our culture, through our system, through our beliefs. We have a lot of this information in our minds. This knowledge that we have, it's manifested through our strengths and through our values. But we sometimes don't recognize them, or we don't even know they're there. We know they're somewhere, but we don't practice them. We don't really, harness them. We don't identify them. We don't use them. We don't put them into practice. Many times people, just in every day, can start to maybe reflect around what are the values? What truly matters to them? What do they stand for? What are the things that in this part of their lives, in this journey where they are standing at, whether it's at the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, what is really important? Because we're not the same person when we're 18 or 40 or 60. We're not the same. We change through time. So our values also grow and transform. So the first thing is that in order to connect with that inner wisdom is to declutter our mind, cancel the noise outside, and focus into hearing and identifying those strengths and values so we can start connecting with ourselves. When we silence all of that and we look inwardly, and we can do that through meditation, we can do that through just sitting and listening to ourselves, we can do that through self-reflection or journaling. We can find those ways, that we can connect with our inner self. We can actually even put our hand in our heart and in our belly and really find that stillness and start to hear our interoceptive awareness, our insight, the movement that's within and our felt sense, then we are connecting with that very internal part of us. And of course, if we feel completely overwhelmed and we're having a lot of problems, and because sometimes there are circumstances that are beyond us, we always must seek professional help.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Faye. It was great having you with us today. If you would like to know more about listening to your inner wisdom, and if you would like to know more about Faye, you can check out her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. We're going for a short break, but we'll be back with another guest and another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, holistic counsellor Barbara Jackson will answer the question, do we share energy with our animals? Welcome back. Our last guest today is holistic counsellor Barbara Jackson, and she'll be asking the question, do we share energy with our animals? Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here.
With animals, do we share energy with them, and how?
Yes, we do, Melissa. If you think of when you're out going for a walk and somebody is walking a dog and they react before they even see you. So if you're an animal person, they'll be potentially wagging their tail and trying to pull over to come and see you because they can sense that you have that affinity with animals. Whereas if somebody doesn't like animals, not all of us do, they may walk away or they might bark at the person because they're sensing that there isn't quite that alignment with them. And one of the important things to understand as well with the animals, if we think of how they're trained in the police, when they do the drug searches or when they trained to help people in epilepsy or people who have seizures, people who have anxiety often will have what they call a therapy animal. One of the most amazing that I find is what we call seeing eye dogs. So people who have vision impairments or are completely blind, they will have a dog, and that dog can read the person so well because they're reliant on them to be their eyes. So if ever you're out and about and you see somebody with a guard dog or a seeing eye dog, it's so important not to go up and pet it because they're working. It would be like me walking up to you when you're working and wanting to distract you. So it's really about understanding and respecting the animals. So when we walk up to an animal, it's also important to understand how we interact because again, the animal will sense us before we may even be close to them. They're aware, they pick up on our energy, on our vibrations, on even the hormones. And so if we walk up to an animal, especially a dog, first of all, it would be like me saying, can I give you a hug? So we would say, if the animal is with someone, may I say hello? Then the other thing that people don't know, if I walk up like this to you, that could feel threatening because that could be, I might want to smack you. If we walk up with the hand like this and we stop close to the animal, let them come to us. We're not threatening them. So respecting their space as well. If we walk up to them, very calmly stroke them and say hello, they will settle. They will pick up on that energy like, oh, this is a nice calm person. I can just sit down and let them give me some love. The same as when we go up to a cat. If we walk up to a cat, we want to respect that space. We want to ask for consent and they will reciprocate. We don't know what an animal has experienced in their lives. They may have experienced trauma or abuse, so they may automatically pull away from new people. When we also look at therapy animals, we often hear about where in equine, where with horse therapy particularly, people who've experienced trauma, people who have different abilities will often go to equine therapy because a horse will come to you. If people stand with their back to a horse, they'll often just walk up and gently stand behind them and wait for the person to respond. If you look at some hospitals in some countries, they will bring in animals to help people. And especially for children as well, if children grow up with animals, they understand a lot more about their behavior. They have to be taught. They have to understand that there's a way, and adults alike have to be taught how to treat an animal, how to honour an animal, and its space as well. So when we can connect with an animal energy therapist, they can help us to learn to soothe our animals, to let them know that it's okay to let go of all that energy of ours that they are carrying. And another thing as well is when we understand what we are experiencing and that our animals are picking up that stress, that anxiety, that feeling of low, being flat, feeling depressed, we can then support each other. So it's actually a really beneficial exchange of energy that can happen as well.
Do you think animals share the same energy as humans?
I would say they share similar energy, and of course we look at primates because our DNA is so similar. There's often videos where somebody will take a baby to the zoo and sit next to the glass, and the female may come up or the male may come up and they'll want to try and touch them, or go to the aquarium and the dolphins will mimic people's behaviours. So animals are so much more in tune with us than we realise.
Do you have a personal experience where you shared energy with an animal?
Melissa, I do. I went with a beautiful group of women in 2019 up to Hervey Bay, and we wanted to connect with the humpback whales. And we went out on a catamaran. And the legal requirements are that you stay 100 metres away from them. And these 3 humpback whales came around the boat, and there was our group and the public as well. And they were actually going around and looking at everybody on the catamaran. That was the highlight. They then went away, and our captain said, if anybody wants to get into the water, do it now. And we're in the ocean, so we had to hold on to what they called a mermaid line. And we had to get in very quietly because they are so sensitive to the sonic frequencies in the water. Slipping in, there were 2 of us holding on. They came back and they were coming up behind us and going under us. And this beautiful female, she would have been about 11 metres, they said, and about 30 tonne. She came under me and she then bared her belly. Any creature will only bare its belly when it feels safe. She then reached her 3-metre pectoral fin up and touched my hand, which was such an incredible gift because it wasn't only my experience. Everybody on that boat, on that catamaran, felt the absolute wonder of the trust of this animal.
Do you have any advice of how people can connect and share energy with animals?
Absolutely, Melissa. So there's certain ways, if we're going to buy our children a pet, we need to remind them and teach them the responsibility and accountability for the care. And also the other thing as well is go and visit the rescue shelters. Go and spend some time with the dogs and with the cats, because they do say the animals choose us. And remembering that it's always about consent.
Well, thank you so much for all that advice, and thanks for being on the program.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
If you'd like to know more about sharing energy with animals and Barbara, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. That's all we've got time for today. Goodbye.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.